Welcome back to the Real Couchwives podcast, where we overanalyze all things Bravo. Now, Vanderpump Rules season 11 may be over, but the discussion is alive and well, especially because it was just Miss Stassi Schroeder's birthday, and she was giving us a little bit of a sneak peek into some Vanderpump Rules behind the scenes.
Yeah, so on her podcast recently, she was talking about, obviously the birthday episodes that are so famous of Vanderpump Rules, and then she was also going a little bit into what production was doing, maybe some of the roles that they were playing and how they were interfering in some of the cast dynamics.
Yeah, so we thought it would be really fun to talk about that. Hopefully a little bit of a lighter episode than some of our, season 11 VPR recaps have been.
It's almost guaranteed to be.
You listen to this podcast episode of Stassi so that you can let me know and we can get the live reactions along with everyone else. So lay it on me.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that kind of stood out to me was just her, confession about the fact that maybe production had played up her birthday celebration a little bit more than she kind of would have wanted. She says that she was kind of very much that party animal monster that we saw.
Party animal monster.
The birthday spirit kind of came alive and was alive and well in Stassi Schroeder for seasons 1 and 2. And so that's a really accurate representation of kind of who she was. But then as obviously she gets a little bit older, she goes further into the series, she kind of felt like it was kind of a bit of a shtick that she kind of had to keep up with, and it wasn't necessarily something that was super her, her first inclination of what she really wanted to do, which I think we had kind of we'd known about a little bit beforehand. But it is interesting to kind of think about now that we're having these conversations with Lala, with Scheana, even with, Alex Baskin, weighing in, all these people are talking about the role that production is playing in Vanderpump Rules, and obviously for Stassi to kind of be they were kind of being okay, well, what are we going to do for your birthday this year? And so it's very much the same kind of thing with okay, Lala, let's see what you're going to do this year. The kind of the way that they're going to be prompted to kind of behave, I guess, in a certain way, and having production become the scapegoat for them, almost for their bad behavior of oh yeah, they made me do this.
Yeah, it is interesting. Obviously, with the Stassi birthday things, I think it's a much, lower scale and not as much as hinging on it. I do have to say, though, those first, it's my birthday, Stassi, it's my birthday, Schroeder, those seasons, you cannot tell me that was not pure Stassi. But later on, basically, she's saying she wanted to grow out of it, and they kind of wouldn't let her, or she didn't feel that she could.
Right. And they're always filming in the summertime, so it's always naturally kind of okay, well, it's your birthday, so what are we gonna do? And by season 3, she was kind of well, I don't even really want to celebrate my birthday.
True, but then it got us some really good Stassi birthday episodes. There was her and Ariana one where they finally came together, because that was a later
forces. Yeah,
that was a later season. Yeah, because she was with Beau at that point.
Yeah, that was such a good birthday episode.
That was such a good one. So even if that one was forced, I'm so happy that it happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice that she gets to kind of look back at them and be okay, that's who I was when I was 24. That's who I was when I was 27. Or not 27, 26.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Ariana had some pretty crazy birthdays too. Then they had the birthday rivalries. And then obviously the Ariana birthday where Tom is oh, I understand that your dad died and you don't want to be alone right now, but we're going to go drive monster trucks.
So we have to go to Las Vegas. We have some really important business to conduct there.
They have monster trucks. I digress. The point that you were making is a good one. It is interesting to start to think about production's kind of invisible hand. Mm-hmm. And I feel it's kind of a newer conversation that's starting to come up in the bravoverse, right? Because while we have some things to say about some of the Real Housewives storylines that feel kind of fake, I don't think we ever felt that it was production, and it was more the women who would kind of get together and try to dictate the storylines a la Beverly Hills.
Yeah, certainly.
I feel the production conversations is a little bit newer, specific to Vanderpump Rules, right? I can't. What are the other instances where we're bringing that up?
Not a lot. Like, I don't really think I mean, obviously, yeah, we can see a couple instances in terms of kind of like Salt Lake City and Potomac as like, the Real Housewives ones where you see production kind of coming in and interfering. But for the most part, like, I think the only times that we necessarily used to see production would be like if like a fight broke out or like something outrageous was happening and like you happen to see like a camera or something get flashed to,
True.
more
Or
than more than anything.
I guess the hot mics, like, would you consider the hot mics like that's different, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like, to them, I feel like that's their answer to people maybe trying to control situations a little
Yeah.
bit. And then they're like, okay, well, we're just going to get you in a hot mic.
Yeah.
And this is your true feelings. You didn't even know that you're being filmed.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it's interesting too because I guess if you think back to kind of like early days of Real Housewives of New York, where Alex McCord and Simon, whatever his last name was it also McCord? Simon something.
Probably also McCord, right? Like,
Maybe. I don't know. Was that her maiden name?
Oh, actually, yeah, I'm not sure.
I have no idea. Simon, where they would talk about the edit, right? Like the edit was the problem. The edit was the
edit's
thing.
always been a thing.
It was always,
but that's
about
not
that.
necessarily production.
Exactly. It's not like, oh, well, production made me do this. Production forced me to do this. Production, put that the gun in my hand and made me shoot that person. Like the proverbially, of course.
Yeah. No, it's I really don't know. And like the whole production conversation is so interesting too, because like right after Vanderpump Rules ends, like Scheana literally came out and pretty much blamed her behavior on production, saying that, there was this kind of moment mid-season where I guess Alex Baskin, like the producer, came up to them and was like, it's not going well. And like, if you want to have another season, like something has to change. So I guess they saw that as, we need to be Team Sandoval, I guess.
We need to get on board with Sandoval because that's where the storyline's going to be going. And I guess that's kind of the interesting thing that Stassi a little bit gets into in this episode of her podcast. She does kind of talk about how, and I think that we know this too because we feel that season 1 and 2 especially are like so real, so raw, like so authentic. Like there's no facade or anything. There's
literally lightning in a bottle. We'll say this forever.
Every time.
The best television.
But she kind of talks about how like, in season 1 we were never thinking about like, oh, how is this going to be dramatic? Right? Like that was just like something that was like so organically happening, is that they just kind of were a little bit of a dramatic crew. They all had these like thoughts and opinions and they had their hopes and dreams of where they were going to go. And they had these betrayals and all these like things happening to them.
It was just pure chaos. It was pure chaos. Just like unadulterated chaos with people who were like, have a little bit of an ego, and people who are loud, and people who clash, and people who are dating and cheating and living together and working together. Just perfection.
Yeah, literal perfection. So I'll get into it a little bit. So she obviously talks about how, Las Vegas, that is her first birthday that we see on the show, her 24th birthday, in fact. And even if you think about the dress that she wears to that episode, in that episode, but also to that dinner, the most like iconic, like sparkly, gorgeous dress.
Yeah, can we first just talk about the things that happen at that dinner, because there's so many. So this is the dinner that Jack storms in on because he wasn't invited to Mexico. This is the dinner where Schwartz pours a drink on Stassi in her dress. This is the dinner where the parking lot fight breaks out and all the boys rip their shirts off. This dinner, right? That's that
dinner. And that dinner that everybody then like ends up leaving and like going home with Jax instead of like hanging out with Stassi after that.
And then Stassi's like backup friends come in to console her.
Well, and even so, she talks about how like the dress in particular, there was this need for continuity that they didn't know about because they were like all brand new cast members, like especially by the time that they were filming her birthday, like they hadn't been filming for that long. And at that point in time, like apparently she had seen the dress on like a modeling shoot that she had done with Kristen. It had been filmed, like the modeling shoot, and then apparently Kristen and Katie went to go get the dress for her. and that also got filmed. But then because they were so annoyed with her with the whole like Frank situation, they basically like threw the dress at her when she got to Vegas, and they didn't film it because like they didn't know it needed to be filmed in order for it to kind of like make sense as like a plot line.
Okay.
So it like got cut, and like it's just interesting that like they were that new to the game, right? They had little to no idea that like it was gonna be a bad thing that the dress wasn't given to them in person, or wasn't given to Stassi in person, that like all of a sudden it's like that plot line is no longer usable.
Wait, why would there need to be a scene of them giving her the dress though?
Because they need to have the scene to be like, okay, well, so they went to the store and they bought the dress, and then here's the scene of them giving it to Stassi, and then here's the scene of Stassi wearing it. Like, otherwise,
Oh,
there's
it was
no
supposed to
like
be like a nice, like, oh, we bought you
handoff.
this dress.
Well, that, and it's also there's like you need to like have like the continuity of everything, right? Like you need to
Yeah.
have like everything kind of be shown in like a logical order, because otherwise, if you're missing that, then it's just like, oh wait, how did she? Where did that come from? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I have to imagine they were so green at the time, to your point. Like,
mm-hmm.
it's kind of shocking how much they put on camera and like how they just were like just so themselves right from the
Yeah,
bat, right off the bat.
very,
I feel
very
like they've
much.
definitely learned those things over time, like especially the
Yeah.
newer cast members.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing is, right? Like we talk about a lot of the times how you can't have VPR in this way anymore because people are a little bit too aware of like, well, how is this going to be dramatic? They know that they need to kind of like put together that plot line. They need to have those like moments happen. They need to like not necessarily have them happen organically. Like, yeah, sometimes you might get like organic moments that just happen to pop up. But that was also, I guess, kind of what was it so interesting about Scandival is that like we saw the plotted out version of season 10 where like
Yeah.
production knew going into it like what their beats were going to be, what the different storylines were going to be, what was their A plot, their B plot. You know, they had it all like mapped out, but then obviously this like massive like secret thing was like hiding in the shadows like this entire time. And
Yeah.
the organic thing ended up being the thing that like saved season 10.
Yeah.
And there's so few like moments for like those organic things to kind of like pop up. And I think even like early days of reality TV are like when those organic things were like people thought that they could hide them, and
Yeah.
then they like turned out that they couldn't. Like,
And that's what ends up making the best TV is like when you pick up on those parts that they
yes,
thought that they were trying to hide.
yeah, I thought they were doing such a good job.
But funny enough, like VPR didn't even need that at the beginning because like they were just putting so much out there already.
Yeah,
Like I don't feel like there was anything that they were like hiding. Yeah, this was
yeah,
like such a crazy thing. It also kind of makes me think of Lala when she's like, you know, when in the reunion when she was talking to Ariana and she's like, "Oh, well, we had this conversation, but you know, it wasn't aired, so we're going to rehash it now." And Ariana's
yes,
like, "Okay, it didn't air, but it still happened." So
yeah,
like I feel like the people who have been in it for so long start to almost like
yeah,
conflate or just like not know the difference between like pickup scenes in real
yeah,
life and this was there but it aired or it didn't air but it was filmed or it wasn't filmed and
yeah.
like what's real life.
What is real life? Well, yeah, exactly. And people like don't know. I think that's the problem too, right? With like this whole like Lala situation is that like she's doing it too much for the plot and not doing it enough for the organic stuff, right? Like, so she is more concerned with kind of like the plot points and like making sure that you're getting kind of like from point A to point B in the storyline, and like not allowing for like organic conversations and organic kind of like friendships to actually be like happening.
That's so true. And it's like I feel like that's what the producer should be doing is like you should just be able to go and live your life and
Yeah.
they're going to film it and then leave it to producers and to, you know, the editors and all these people to like make it then make sense. And obviously you
Yeah.
have to have like pickup line, like is that what they're called? Like when they have to like
Yeah, they do like the
add
pickups and
scenes
stuff.
later
Yes, yeah.
to for continuity
Yeah.
purposes. But
I
it's like,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, but it is also interesting that you say that too, because I guess like the thing is we think in our minds that like production is like this like all-seeing kind of like, oh, you know, being or like creature, like whatever. But they are like a little bit biased, right, too, and like that's kind of why there's like a little bit of an interesting struggle there. So Stassi even talks about how in season one, you know, as you mentioned, the Jax and Frank fight had like broken out, like everybody took Jax's side. And at the end of the night, like Stassi's like alone by herself. Frank had apparently got kicked out of like filming for Las Vegas, and like at the end of that
No way.
evening. And so Stassi's actually kind of like basically like by herself, hanging out with like her production and like I guess like Peter. Like that's it. That was all
Always
that was
Peter.
that was all that was left for her at the end of the night. And she was talking to production and she's like who do you believe? Like who would like you know you are seeing this unfold in front of you as well, like who do you believe? And apparently the producer said to her like it's Jax, like you have to believe Jax. So like there is like producers aren't these like you know like oh we're documentary, like you know we're so removed we have no opinions. Like no, they fully have opinions, and it's interesting to believe that there was a time when they fully did believe Jax. And Stassi says that like she knew to her core basically that like Jax was lying and that like that was happening. But
I would almost think so. But was she insinuating that they were wanting her to believe Jax, or that's
no,
what
I
they
think
felt?
it felt like she thought she was asking them their opinion and they were telling her like it's Jax. Like
Okay, because I was gonna say like if you know they were trying to meddle, then you would think that they would be like, no, he's definitely cheating. You should go, you know, investigate that or whatever.
Yes, go find out some more information.
Yeah. So Jax truly had everyone fooled.
He really did have everyone fooled. The interesting thing too that like she kind of like brings up about production in particular around like her birthdays is that so in season 2 she talks about how like she gets Christina Kelly to like come on the trip with her because she like needs like one friend out of like all of these people that are gonna be there. And she talks about how like Christina and Kelly and her were like basically like very boring and they would always like go to bed at the end of the night after filming, but Katie and Kristen were the ones that would stay up and like be like drinking and like chatting and like hanging out with producers, which I also think is really interesting too, because if you think about like the dynamics of like you know like these people like obviously have to yeah, like they have to hang out with them all the time. They have to kind of like build these relationships with them. But like at the same time, you're kind of like, okay, but then what's that line and what's the ethics of like you like hanging out and like buddying with Katie and Kristen? Like, is that also why we're like seeing this season with Sandoval like getting this amazing edit? Because was he the one staying up and drinking and chatting and hanging out with producers? And like he's that thus gets like the good edit in season 11.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say that Katie and Kristen ever had good edits.
Well, in season 2, like 1, 2, season 1 and 2, I feel like they were like on like, the more favorable side than like Stassi, who was very much like given the villain edit in those early years.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I would love to know more about that. Like, I don't feel like I know enough on like really what it is that they do and how deeply they're involved. And I wonder, it must be different from franchise to franchise too, right? And obviously different in like a Housewives versus like this one where it's like these people are ingrained in each other's lives and it feels a lot more like a family type of dynamic, like a dysfunctional friends family.
Well, and I can kind of picture and envision like, especially with the early days of VPR, like them being like young or youngish producers, young cast members, like, you know, building those bonds, having those relationships. Whereas like maybe like it's a little bit harder for me to imagine like, you know, Kyle Richards or like Yolanda Hadid like butting it up with Alex Baskin and Jeremiah and like hanging out like after hours and being like, oh, do you remember that time that we went there? We went to Dubai and it was amazing. Like, you know, it's hard to imagine. But interestingly, that does actually make me think of like 2 other instances where we have known that production has had some meddling business, right? Like back in season 8, I believe, it was revealed that there was a producer that really didn't like Scheana. And that's why Scheana for so many years had gotten kind of like a little bit of like a boy crazy? Is that the saying? Okay, yeah. It sounds weird. Boy crazy kind of like edit because like she didn't like her. And so she was like, yeah, leave that scene in. That makes it look really bad. Like,
Oh my god, so true. Oh man, but poor Scheana just doesn't do herself any favors in
No.
trying to get better at
No,
it.
unfortunately. Well, and I also think that that's part of like what ended up kind of happening with the whole Lisa Rinna thing. There was a lot of speculation that before Lisa Rinna like officially left Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there was the thoughts and feelings that like basically the crew was like very much like in love with Lisa Rinna. They enjoyed her and they weren't kind of like questioning her or like kind of like doing anything to kind of like go behind her back. And that's why kind of like in the end it did eventually change, but like if you have too much of that kind of like buddy buddy relationship, you create the monster of Lisa Rinna. It's
Oh my
like,
god, that makes so much sense because yeah, they just yeah, that's a whole other thing. But like they just kept around for so long, and also
mm-hmm.
they let her leave and be like, I'm leaving
Yeah.
myself. This is a decision that I have made on my own. Sorry, Andy. I don't want to come
I
back.
don't want to come back. Well, even the whole Danielle situation, not to completely
I was
change,
gonna bring that up.
not to completely change our topic, but like even Danielle saying that she's like left Summerhouse and that she's kind of like, she's deciding to leave. Like, do we really think that
Yeah.
that's true?
No. Okay. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about that. I don't think that's true. Also, she had like a pretty not great season. Like,
Yeah.
like not even that she did anything. It's just like it
Yeah.
wasn't memorable.
No.
Her season on Winter House was really bad. I feel like audience has kind of like, I don't want to say turned on her because I don't know if she was ever like a fan favorite.
No, I don't think so. I think she's always been a little bit kind of like a background character, but like messy enough and like doing enough to kind of like justify her place there.
Yeah, like I definitely understood it,
Mm-hmm.
and I like for the most part enjoyed her. I
Yeah.
feel like she's been harder to watch the past two seasons. We talked a little bit about this too, though. Like with
Yeah.
she's going through a breakup and she's
Of
processing
course.
stuff.
Yeah.
But like she doesn't feel like a big enough face of Summerhouse to come out and make that type of like I'm leaving.
Yeah.
When like most of the cast just kind of fade away when they
Yeah,
don't come
exactly.
back.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, at least I can understand that she's been there long enough to kind of justify that kind of, you know, treatment maybe of it. She's been there since season 2.
That's true. That's
Season
true.
3, season
Like
2.
she is. It's not like
Yeah.
she's like a one season wonder or whatever.
No, exactly. And even like I think the only other kind of like long standing cast member would probably be Luke. And like when he left, he just kind of like dissolved away. But like he never really had much of a like plot line.
Yeah.
And then obviously like Hannah would be the only other person that would probably be like as long standing as Danielle. And she
It's true.
was very
Summerhouse.
controversial the year that she left.
Summerhouse really. They've all stuck around for the
They
most
really
part.
have. I know.
But yeah, like you do wonder, like how do some people get the ability to say that they've walked away?
Yeah.
And also it's just the fact that we never believe it. Maybe she did. Who knows?
Well, Bethany Frankel, you know, say what we will
Yeah.
about Miss Bethany Frankel. Back in her day, when she was still a more reliable narrator,
Yeah.
she did basically kind of like reveal that like basically anybody that says that they left or left on their own terms probably didn't leave. Then I'm pretty sure she followed that up with, but
Except
I did.
for me.
Exactly. I'm the exception. Yeah, so I don't know. I can kind of see like it would probably be hard money to walk away from, like really. I guess maybe Raquel, right? Like is Raquel like the one person that we could actually believe like really did walk away and
That's true. That's true.
made that life choice for herself? I can't
Well,
think of anybody
even
else.
what's funny? Lisa Vanderpump has been going on podcasts recently, which she like
Yeah.
never does.
Yeah, she was on
So
Call Her Daddy.
And now she's on Not Skinny,
Not
Not
Skinny, Not Fat.
Fat.
Yeah. Did you listen to that?
I did. It was not good.
Oh no.
She is. I'm sorry, Lisa. She is not a good podcast guest.
Oh
Like,
no. What do you
she
think
just
her issue is?
oh my god. It's just like, well, like they don't get into anything actually like interesting really, and she just like she talks a lot. Like she talks over the host a lot. She doesn't really like allow for conversation. I feel like she thinks she's on like her own like comedy hour or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. But I brought this up before, like, and I noticed it with Luann too. When Luann went on a podcast, like, I find some of the housewives when they go on podcasts, they just like, okay, I don't know how to say this because like obviously we love them and they're like so monumental to us.
Yeah.
But I feel like they kind of like they go on thinking that everyone on this podcast, like their audience all knows who they are and on like knows all of the intricacies of like, you know, the restaurants that they own and the scenes that they were in and the iconic scenes, and they'll just kind of like talk about that as if it's just like everyone in the world knows it.
Totally, of course.
So I just I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, there just wasn't much insight that came up. But the reason I did bring it up was because one of the things, oh, actually, it wasn't even on the podcast. I think this literally happened at the reunion. But Lisa is essentially now talking about the way that she left the franchise. And she's basically like, oh, like, I chose not to go to the reunion, and that's because I didn't want to reconcile.
Right, yes.
You know, because you usually go to a reunion for reconciliation. She said it again on the podcast, so that's why I brought it up.
Okay, yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of her even being like, you know, I chose to not go to the reunion, which I knew would sever the ties.
Right.
Well, that's how I took it.
That's true. Okay, that is true. Lisa Vanderpump probably did leave. And like at least the thing is like she also left knowing she still had like another show.
That's true.
And like she's now had like, I guess she technically like is still like is technically an executive producer of The Valley too. Did I see that?
Is she?
I think somebody said that.
Oh, that's so. Oh,
isn't that crazy? That feels like that's so unfair if she really is, because I just like you're so like removed from that. Like you just happen to have a tie.
Actually, another thing that she said in this podcast that relates to what we're talking about is I forget her name now from Not Skinny but Not Fat, but she was
like Amanda or something.
Oh yeah, I think so. Amanda Hirsch, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
She asked her, she's like, you know, like, is Ariane upset with you because you were a little bit like team Tom Sandoval,
right? And
she's like, what? No, like I wasn't team Tom Sandoval. Like what he did was disgusting. She's like, I'm team Vanderpump Rules. Like I'm team producing and like team
making a TV show.
Yeah. And I was just kind of like, did you just kind of show your cards here? Like
I mean, I think she did, because also like, do you remember back in season 10 when she fully was like just like coming in to do a scene to do production's bidding, which was actually kind of great because it was just like, oh well, it is a little bit messy, but basically she would like come to Schwartz and Sandy's and tell Peter, okay, Peter, you can't date Rachel, she's your employee. And then Peter would go and like be like, I guess we have to break up. you're my employee.
Or of course there was this one was Ken, but I can't believe
like,
that
Tom Sandoval
was in the jacuzzi with Kel.
Well, Ariana was away. Well, that, and then also like even like the whole like Lisa Vanderpump was the one that told James Kennedy that Graham had been injured at the like the boarding place, and he was like, and she's like, oh, is everything okay with Graham? And he's like, oh, what?
I do feel like she's more and more just a plot device to like move the plot along or to like fill gaps and like show the audience what's happened.
Yeah. Which I don't hate, honestly, because I do think that that's kind of interesting, and like maybe that's what they kind of thought they could continue to kind of get away with in terms of like how they kind of like steered the conversation in like certain directions for Vanderpump Rules this season at least. But I guess I am kind of curious to see how like it goes forward from here with like in terms of like how production, now that like, you know, Scheana's gone on her podcast and basically blamed production, and like Lala's gone on her podcast and blamed production.
Did Lala do it too? But Lala's like doubled down on it. Like Lala's doubled down on all of her stances where it like Scheana's now kind of being like, oh, that's true. I was kind of hard on her and I don't know if I believe that anymore. Or actually was she, in true Scheana fashion, she said, I understand Lala and I understand Ariana and I am staying in the middle.
Nice and comfortable right here in the middle. Okay, you're right. I don't think Lala has like blamed production. I think out of the two of them, Scheana's probably done more work kind of like blaming production and trying to like backpedal a little bit and make it like not her fault, whereas like Lala's maybe just kind of like talked more about like conversations that happened with production and like different things like that.
Right, yeah, she's brought that up. So Alex Baskin has actually come out and like countered what Scheana said, being like, really? Yeah, we had a moment where we, you know, got everyone together and we're like, it's not really working. Like we need to be we need to be cohesive in some way. Like this isn't a show about like fractioned groups.
Right.
He's
yes.
like, but we didn't tell them to manufacture anything. Like, we didn't tell them to do anything. He also kind of brought it up in the sense that like social media was getting really involved, and like everything that they were doing was on social media and people were having opinions. And he kind of just said like, you should not think about that and just go on and make the show that you've always made.
Right.
To me, it kind of feels like I believe that happened. Like, I kind of believe Scheana.
I believe her version of events.
I believe that they told them in some way, this is not working and something's got to change. Yeah, I don't think they said like you have to manufacture things and you have to be Tom's friend and you have to get in line. But I think they said something to make them feel that they had to do something.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, I think if you dangle a carrot or something like that, like in front of somebody, like you kind of expect that they're gonna be like, they're gonna infer whatever you're implying. And if you're telling somebody like, you guys might lose the show, like they're gonna do whatever they think that they need to do to like fix that. And it went like so horribly wrong.
It went so wrong, and it truly was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like,
yeah, it was a disaster. But I do wonder kind of like, okay, so now that like Scheana's like done this and like Lala's kind of exposed, I guess, like let's say she's exposed the game, even if she's not like fully blaming producers, like does that put them in jeopardy of like not coming back next year? Like if producers are kind of like, we're good with you, never mind.
Okay, so this is my conspiracy theory brain.
Yeah.
I don't like knowing that, Lala, actually, maybe who knows what Lala believes at this point. Like, honestly, I truly don't know.
It's impossible to say.
But I do think that Scheana did this, for a certain fan reaction or for the show to continue on. Like, I feel like there's definitely motivations for her actions, not that they make them better, but I don't feel like it was fully what she believed. And so because they went through all of that to, do what they thought they were doing to secure the show, I don't feel like she would go and threaten her own job by, throwing production under the bus when like she herself has been, on the other side of having bad edits from production not liking her. Like, I don't feel like she would do it. So part of me is like, she asked, I don't know. I don't know what
she asked production.
Or, like, I don't feel like she blindsided them with this.
Right.
I don't know. I'm getting really conspiracy-like. It's just, like,
but, like, almost like they're in cahoots.
It's almost like she wouldn't do this unless she knew it would be okay.
Right. And, like, it would, like, create, like, continue to have, like, oh, they're at least talking about us. They're reading, like,
I don't know. I'm probably like
in the public.
It's probably crazy, and to be honest, I didn't fully finish the thought until until like I had to say it out loud. But it's just like it doesn't make sense. Like she went through all of this to do what she thought was keeping the show and making the show look good and keeping herself employed. Then why would you then go and like bite the hand that feeds you and like
Yeah, I do know, and that's just it. Like it's like only like have you only done that because you are like, well, I now need to do whatever I can to secure like more like money and listeners and like whatever I can while it's still relevant, because now I truly don't know what the next step is? Or has it been kind of like, is it secured now because it's good? Like, is it fine?
That probably makes more sense, actually, what you're saying. It's probably more that now she doesn't know what is happening with BPR, so she's like, let me at least try to get the fans back. And
right. Like, maybe, but then then, is that better? Like, because then it's like, okay, but then are you really fully guaranteeing that, like, they're not going to bring you back next year? Like, I just don't know.
You see what happens when we start to question the authenticity? We don't know what to believe.
We don't know what's going on.
We don't know what's real.
What's happening? How do we move forward from here?
Now we have to question everything. And honestly, like, it is a huge kind of like question mark about next season. Is like, I feel like they lost our trust in like the authenticness of Vanderpump Rules. And it's like, I don't know how they get that back.
Yeah. I don't know how they get that back. And I don't even know if they will get that back. Like, I just don't even know.
As much as the season sucked, I would be so sad if like that's how it went out. Like after so many years, like it can't be. Like they have to come back better.
It would be very, very depressing if that was the end of it.
Did
So
Stassi reveal anything else? We went so far.
Does Stassi have any other insights into how this could
Stassi,
finish?
can you help us?
Not like, so that was, those were like the biggest kind of like juiciest bits of tea. You know, I do think it's interesting that kind of like the one other little thing that she revealed about the Cabo season, which was season 2 for her 25th birthday. There were two little things that I thought were kind of like fun. So one of them was that actually I mentioned that she and Christina Kelly were on the trip together. So she actually talked about how like production was like dead set on not letting her bring Christina Kelly because they were like, you like basically like just like thought that like it was gonna like ruin the dynamic. Like they wanted her to just be there with like all of the couples and then her ex-boyfriend and Jax and Peter, which is just like really unfair. It's like, it's your birthday, like you don't get to decide. Like
I can't remember what happened on the Cabo trip. Like there's so many different trips. Like so which one was that?
So this is the birthday. They go to Cabo, they like go on the pirate ship.
Oh yes,
do you remember that?
I remember.
And then Jack
that was Peter's birthday, wasn't it?
Or no, that was Peter. That was her birthday.
Oh, and there's something about Peter bringing girls to the pirate ship.
No, Jax shows up bringing girls to the pirate ship, and that's just it. Like Jax has been like spending all of season 2, basically up until that point, like trying to get her back. And then at that point in time, he's like gotten the tattoo, like she's seen it, like he's like confessed his love to her like a million times. They go to Arrowhead to like see her family.
Yeah.
And he sees that's when she first sees the tattoo. Anyways, the whole thing. But then he goes and like finds like, I don't know, half a dozen girls, and like brings them back to the to the
I
boat.
remember that.
And actually it's interesting too because she talks about how she's like, I don't know why we didn't set sail, and she's like, maybe we didn't set sail because they needed Jax to show up halfway through with all these girls, and like that was going to be the plot point, which is like totally fair enough. And I just remember like watching that episode and like that scene in particular, and like feeling so bad for these girls that were like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be on a TV show. I'll come, be on your pirate ship. That sounds lovely. We'll have a little drink. And then they're like, they get there and they didn't realize that they were like part of this like revenge plan of Jax's. And Stassi and everybody was just like, bye. And they were like, oh, sorry, we'll leave. Never mind. Jack's the worst.
True.
and then she finds out like a couple episodes or a few episodes later that like Jax and Kristen have had like an affair, and they've hooked up at least twice, and once of them was like while Tom Sandoval was home. You just can't make TV like that anymore.
You truly, truly, truly can't. It was just... And, like, honestly, just in talking about this theme of production, like, what must it have been like to work on those first few seasons and just, like, witness this chaos? And, like, it actually must be such a strange line, to your point, of, like, building friendships with these people. Like, you have to. Like, you're working with them every day. They're your coworkers. But then also, knowing the business point of view that you have as well. But it's just like, I wonder if like as they're seeing everything unfold, are they just like, this is gold, like this is pure, this is just dollar signs?
You have to be. You have to be like, oh my god, I can't believe we just got to like shoot that and like see that or something. And I think it's also interesting to think about, like, I don't know if you've watched The Jinx at all, or like it's like such a like lateral mind leap.
I really would like to know where you're gonna go with this. So I didn't watch the first season, but I'm watching part 2, which kind of showed me the ending of the first season.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go back and watch it.
You should go back and watch it.
I have to be part of pop culture, and I have to just meet it where it's at now.
Yeah. You have to be like a big fan of like true crime. Like you just almost don't even get a choice.
I do love true crime.
Well, there you go. Well, so the interesting thing about The Jinx, and obviously, I guess just to give like a tiny little bit of backstory, it's about a serial killer. So it's very on brand for Stassi Schroeder.
That's true. She would appreciate this.
Yeah. So like his name is Robert Durst, and basically like he like happened to be like around all of these like mysterious murders that had kind of happened over like a few decades or something.
Like his best friend, and
his
then
best friend, like this person that like lived like near like a place where like a roommate or something like lived in the same building, something like that. Anyways, and so like this HBO documentary comes out like I don't know, like 10 years ago or something like that. It's been a little while. And in the documentary filmmakers are like filming this guy, and now I feel like I've also probably lost where my train of thought about this was.
Oh no.
no, I'll get there. It's okay. But they're like the filming this guy, like doing an interview with him, like asking him like about like evidence that they found about like how he might have committed these murders, and how, yeah, like basically they like kind of like they present him with some evidence, and then they like think that they've kind of like maybe like gotten him like a little bit rattled. But anyways, he goes off to the washroom, like the interview is on break or whatever, and he goes off to the washroom and he like is talking to himself, and in the talking to himself he like confesses
confessional.
it is confessional. No, in the bathroom he confesses to like, you know, having, you know, done these deeds and whatnot. I've already said
YouTube friendly.
Once. I don't know, like how many times you can say murders.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
I don't know. One time, 2 times. I've like said 3 or 4 times now. Anyways, so it's the fact that like, so that scene wasn't, or that like audio like wasn't heard until it got to like the cutting room floor. Like it was like passed along.
I thought that they were hearing it. I thought that the people in the room were hearing it.
They weren't hearing it in the moment.
Oh,
they like
wow.
They walked away from that interview like being like, well, that went really well. We got a lot of information. We've clearly rattled him. Good job, team. Not knowing what they actually had. And so this is the crux of the situation, where like I feel like there have to be like so many things in Bravo history, but like in even Vanderpump Rules history in particular, where like they have these like little tiny like, you know, audio bites or these things that are happening or like something's going on, and they don't even know what they have while they're filming it or while it's like uncovering.
That is so funny. That is hilarious. Like that you just made that comparison. Oh my god. Yeah. No, it's so true though, right? It's like, well, I guess like the people filming obviously see it as it's happening.
Maybe, but then even if you think about like the Rachel Sandoval like affair, right? Like that was literally happening in front of their eyes, and like
that's true.
They didn't even know.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Anyways.
They're just like, what a journey. Yeah. I honestly like. We, especially now that VPR has gotten not great.
Yeah.
I just like, so many people I know just continue to rewatch like the first few seasons. Weren't you saying that you were just starting to watch it again?
I was just rewatching. Yeah, I'm in season 3 right now.
Like I've watched it so many times.
Yeah.
And like I just like do a tell all, or like just like Stassi, like tell us more behind the scenes. Yeah. Like we're never through talking about that. I just want to know all of these things.
Especially hearing about like the old stuff too, right? Like I just think that's like so interesting to go back and like listen to anything about that. Like it's fascinating. So
it was just so good. I mean, well, Kristen is doing like a rewatch where she kind of spills some of the tea of certain things.
Yeah.
That she's rewatching with her boyfriend, which is hilarious because that must be so brutal.
Yeah. But didn't they just rebrand their podcast? Is it a new podcast, but they're still doing the same thing?
I haven't watched it. I haven't listened in a while, so I'm not sure. But I know that they were doing a VPR rewatch.
Yeah, they were at least last year. Yeah. Anyway.
Any other bits of tea from
those
Stassi?
Those are like the key bits of information. I feel like I've kept people long enough. Should let them go about their business.
Yeah, we went on a little bit of a windy road. I've had a very long week, and I again very loopy right now, but that was fun. Thank you for sharing. And as always, let us know what you're watching. What are we going to do next? Mm-hmm. We want to do some like ranking of Vanderpump Rules, maybe like best seasons,
or like maybe like a really long form video where we go in crazy depth about Vanderpump Rules. Like, would that be interesting? I don't know.
Yeah, we can. I'm happy to rewatch anytime.
Yeah.
Also, Vanderpump Villa, because I have thoughts. I literally haven't even gotten past the first episode because it's so brutal. It's just so fake seeming. Yeah. Actually, talking about, one really quick thing.
Yeah. Talking about
it's not production, but it's like the reason I can't get into Vanderpump Villa is like these people are overproducing themselves so hard. It's actually insane.
Yeah.
Like, it's just they're getting into screaming and screaming matches with each other. It's the first night. You literally don't even know these people, and it's over like nothing. I'm sorry. I don't think you're that explosive a person. The fact that they have, apparently they're calling them like Walmart Jax and Stassi, because it's like these two people who just broke up but are still kind of hooking up a little bit, and like
weird.
They're both extremely messy. It's like, come on, guys. Like,
we see what you're doing here.
Yeah. So maybe we can watch it and do a retrospective,
a reaction or something.
Maybe it gets better. Who knows?
Who knows? Could be.